بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عن جابر بن عبد الله الأنصاري عن فاطمة الزهراء عليها السلام بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله قال: سمعت فاطمة أنها قالت:
دخل علي أبي رسول الله في بعض الأيام فقال: السلام عليك يا فاطمة. فقلت: وعليك السلام. قال: إني أجد في بدني ضعفا. فقلت له: أعيذك بالله يا أبتاه من الضعف. فقال: يا فاطمة، ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به. فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به وصرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسن قد أقبل وقال: السلام عليك يا أمه. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال: يا أمه، إني أشم عندك راحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله. فقلت: نعم، إن جدك تحت الكساء. فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا جدا يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء؟ فقال: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معه تحت الكساء. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين قد أقبل وقال: السلام عليك يا أمه. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال لي: يا أمه، إني أشم عندك راحة طيبة كأنها راحة جدي رسول الله. فقلت: نعم، إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء. فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا جده، السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء؟ فقال: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معهما تحت الكساء. فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال: السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. فقلت وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك راحة طيبة كأنها راحة أخي وابن عمي رسول الله. فقلت نعم، ها هو مع ولدك تحت الكساء. فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال له عليك السلام يا أخي ويا وصي وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء. ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بضعتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء. فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ بي رسول الله بطرفي الكساء وأومى بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي، لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي، يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم. أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم. إنهم مني وأنا منهم، فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم، واذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. فقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماواتي، إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئا ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبته هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل يا رب ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. فقال جبرائيل: يا رب، أتأذن لي أن أهبط إلى الأرض لأكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله: نعم، قد أذنت لك. فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال: السلام عليك يا رسول الله. العلي الأعلى يقرئك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك: وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيا ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم، وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم، فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله: وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله، إنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء فقال لأبي: إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول: إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. فقال علي لأبي: يا رسول الله، أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي: والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي: إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال أبي: رسول الله يا علي، والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا وفيهم مهموم الله وفرج الله همه، ولا مغموم الله وكشف الله غمه، ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Marhum Sayyid Ibn Taus has said, if you were not lucky enough to perform the deeds and recitals of Friday, do not forget to recite the salawat of Abul Hasan Zarrab Isfahani. This dua has a secret that Allah has informed us of. The same emphasis is seen in the dua Allahumma arifni nafsak. Abul Hasan Zarrab Isfahani is among the Shias of the era of Ghaibat al-Sughra, the minor occultation, and this salawat was taught to him by the Imam of our time, Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu al-Sharif.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin Sayyidil Mursaleen wa khatamin nabiyyina wa hujjati rabbil alamin المنتجب في الميثاق المصطفى في الظلال المطهر من كل آفة البريء من كل عين المؤمل للنجاة المرتجى للشفاعة المفوض إليه دين الله. اللهم شرف بنيانه وعظم برهانه وأفلج حجته وارفع درجته وأضئ نوره وبيض وجهه وأعطه الفضل والفضيلة والمنزلة والوسيلة والدرجة الرفيعة وابعثه مقاما محمودا يغبطه به الأولون والآخرون. وصل على أمير المؤمنين ووارث المرسلين وقائد الغر المحجلين وسيد الوصيين وحجة رب العالمين. وصل على الحسن بن علي إمام المؤمنين ووارث المرسلين وحجة رب العالمين. وصل على الحسين بن علي إمام المؤمنين ووارث المرسلين وحجة رب العالمين. وصل على علي بن الحسين إمام المؤمنين ووارث المرسلين وحجة رب العالمين. وصل على محمد بن علي إمام المؤمنين ووارث المرسلين وحجة رب العالمين. وصل على جعفر بن محمد إمام المؤمنين ووارث المرسلين وحجة رب العالمين. وصل على موسى بن جعفر إمام المؤمنين ووارث المرسلين وحجة رب العالمين. وصل على علي بن موسى إمام المؤمنين ووارث المرسلين وحجة رب العالمين. وصل على محمد بن علي إمام المؤمنين ووارث المرسلين وحجة رب العالمين. وصل على علي بن محمد إمام المؤمنين ووارث المرسلين وحجة رب العالمين. وصل على الحسن بن علي إمام المؤمنين ووارث المرسلين وحجة رب العالمين. وصل على الخلف الهادي المهدي إمام المؤمنين ووارث المرسلين وحجة رب العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد وأهل بيته الأئمة الهادين العلماء الصادقين الأبرار المتقين دعائم دينك وأركان توحيدك وتراجمة وحيك وحججك على خلقك وخلفائك في أرضك الذين اخترتهم لنفسك واصطفيتهم على عبادك وارتضيتهم لدينك وخصصتهم بمعرفتك وجللتهم بكرامتك وغشيتهم برحمتك وربيتهم بنعمتك وغذيتهم بحكمتك وألبستهم نورك ورفعتهم في ملكوتك وحففتهم بملائكتك وشرفتهم بنبيك صلواتك عليه وآله. اللهم صل على محمد وعليهم صلاة زاكية نامية كثيرة دائمة طيبة لا يحيط بها إلا أنت ولا يسعها إلا علمك ولا يحصيها أحد غيرك. اللهم وصل على وليك المحيي سنتك القائم بأمرك الداعي إليك الدليل عليك حجتك على خلقك وخليفتك في أرضك وشاهدك على عبادك. اللهم أعز نصره ومد في عمره وزين الأرض بطول بقائه. اللهم اكفه بغي الحاسدين وأعذه من شر الكائدين وازجر عنه إرادة الظالمين وخلصه من أيدي الجبارين. اللهم أعطه في نفسه وذريته وشيعته ورعيته وخاصته وعامته وعدوه وجميع أهل الدنيا ما تقر به عيناه وتسر به نفسه، وبلغه أفضل ما أمله في الدنيا والآخرة، إنك على كل شيء قدير. اللهم جدد به ما امتحى من دينك، وأحي به ما بطل من كتابك، وأظهر به ما غير من حكمك، حتى يعود دينك به وعلى يديه غضا جديدا خالصا مخلصا لا شك فيه ولا شبهة معه ولا باطل عنده ولا بدعة لديه. اللهم نور بنوره كل ظلمة، وهد بركنه كل بدعة، واهدم بعزه كل ضلالة، واقصم به كل جبار، وأخمد بسيفه كل نار، وأهلك بعدله جور كل جائر، وأجر حكمه على كل حكم، وأذل بسلطانه كل سلطان. اللهم أذل كل من ناواه، وأهلك كل من عاداه، وامكر بمن كاده، واستأصل من جحده حقه، واستهان بأمره، وسعى في إطفاء نوره، وأراد إخماد ذكره. اللهم صل على محمد المصطفى، وعلي المرتضى، وفاطمة الزهراء، والحسن الرضا، والحسين المصفى، وجميع الأوصياء، مصابيح الدجى وأعلام الهدى، ومنار التقى، والعروة الوثقى، والحبل المتين، والصراط المستقيم. وصل على وليك وولاة عهدك والأئمة من ولدك، ومد في أعمارهم، وزد في آجالهم، وبلغهم أقصى آمالهم دينا ودنيا وآخرة، إنك على كل شيء قدير.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
آفة البريء من كل عيب.
السلام عليك يا حجة الله في أرضه
السلام عليك يا عين الله في خلقه. السلام عليك يا نور الله الذي يهتدي به المهتدون ويفرج به عن المؤمنين. السلام عليك أيها المهذب الخالد. السلام عليك أيها الولي الناصر. السلام عليك يا سفينة النجاة. السلام عليك يا عين الحياة. السلام عليك صلى الله عليك وعلى آل بيتك الطيبين الطاهرين. السلام عليك عجل الله لك ما وعدك من النصر وظهور الأمر. السلام عليك يا مولاي. أنا مولاك عارف بأولاك وأخراك. أتغرب إلى الله تعالى بك وبآل بيتك وأنتظر ظهورك وظهور الحق على يديك. وأسأل الله أن يصلي على محمد وآل محمد وأن يجعلني من المنتظرين لك والطابعين والناصرين لك على أعدائك والمستشهدين بين يديك في جملة أوليائك. يا مولاي يا صاحب الزمان، صلوات الله عليك وعلى آل بيتك. هذا يوم الجمعة وهو يومك المتوقع فيه ظهورك والحرج فيه للمؤمنين على يديك وغسل الكافرين بسيفك. وأنا يا مولاي فيه ضيفك وجارك. وأنت يا مولاي كريم من أولاد الكرام ومأمور بالضيافة والإجارة، فأضفني وأجرني. صلوات الله عليك وعلى أهل بيتك الطاهرين. نذيرك حيث ما اتجهت ركابي وضيفك حيث كنت من البلاد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. You are listening to Voice of Sanab, the online radio of Sanab.org. ZAINAB.org.
زيارة الإمام الصادق عليه السلام. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك أيها الإمام الصادق. السلام عليك أيها الوصي الناطق. السلام عليك أيها الفائق الرائق. السلام عليك أيها السلام الأعظم. السلام عليك أيها الصراط الأقوم. السلام عليك يا مصباح الظلمات. السلام عليك يا دافع المعضلات. السلام عليك يا مفتاح الخيرات. السلام عليك يا معدن البركات. السلام عليك يا صاحب الحجج والدلالات الواضحات. السلام عليك يا صاحب البراهين الساطعات. السلام عليك يا ناصر دين الله. السلام عليك يا ناشر حكم الله. السلام عليك يا فاصل الخطابات. السلام عليك يا كاشف الكربات. السلام عليك يا عميد الصادقين. السلام عليك يا لسان الناطقين. السلام عليك يا خلف السابقين. السلام عليك يا زعيم الصادقين الصالحين. السلام عليك يا سيد المسلمين. السلام عليك يا كهف المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا هادي المضلين. السلام عليك يا سكن الطائعين. أشهد يا مولاي أنك علم الهدى والعروة الوثقى وشمس الضحى وبحر الندى وكهف الورى والمثل الأعلى. صلى الله على روحك وبدنك. والسلام عليك يا مولاي وعلى آبائك جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ويل يومئذ للمكذبين الذين يكذبون بيوم الدين وما يكذب به إلا إلا كل معتد أثيم إذا تتلى عليه آياتنا قال أساطير الأولين كلا بل ران على قلوبهم ما كانوا يكسبون كلا إنهم عن ربهم يومئذ لمحجوبون ثم إنهم لسال الجحيم ثم يقال هذا الذي كنتم به تكذبون صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات. The English translation. Woe to the deniers on that day, who deny the day of retribution, and none denies it except every sinful transgressor. When our signs are recited to him, he says, "Mists of the ancients." No, that is not the case. Rather, their hearts have been sullied by what they have been earning. Indeed, they will be alienated from their Lord on that day. Afterward, they will enter hell. Then told, "This is what you used to deny." Sadaqallahu alayhi. ترجمه فارسی. وای بر تکذیب کنندگان در آن هنگام، آنان که روز جزا را دروغ میپندارند و جز هر تجاوز پیشه گناهکاری آن را به دروغ نمیگیرد. همان که چون آیات ما بر او خوانده شود گوید اینها افسانه های پیشینیان است. نه، چنین نیست، بلکه آنچه مرتکب میشدند زنگار بر دلهایشان بسته است. زنگار. زهی پندار که آنان در آن روز از پروردگارشان سخت محجوبند. آنان به یقین آنان به جهنم درآیند، آنگاه به یقین آنان به جهنم درآیند. سپس گفته خواهد شد این همان است که آن را به دروغ می گرفتید. صلوات.
شروع کنیم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. الحمد لله رب العالمین والصلاة والسلام على سیدنا محمد و آله الطیبین الطاهرین. Salamun alaikum, dear brothers and sisters. So how many cannot follow Farsi here? One, no Farsi. Okay. بعضی از کدومی که از دوستان نمیتونن انگلیسی دنبال کنن؟ چه کسی انگلیسی متوجه نمیشه؟ Okay, given the mix of our audience, I'm gonna talk in both languages. Maybe speak English first for the most part, and then translate. Give summary in Farsi. And please don't hesitate to interrupt me with your questions. I'm totally okay with that, and actually I encourage that. And you're welcome to ask in either Farsi or English, any language you like. So this is the third and last session of our discussion. The topic was guidance and misguidance according to the Holy Quran. How does guidance take place? How does misguidance take place? To give you a short summary of what we discussed in the last two sessions, so we said that by guidance and misguidance, we mean guidance and misguidance in our journey to salvation. In Farsi, we call it Rastagari, in Arabic, An-Najah or As-Sa'adah. And the question I raised was, how do guidance and misguidance take place? And specifically, is it a choice that we make whether to accept guidance, to be guided, or to reject guidance, or it's not up to us? It's something that God decides, or other things determine beyond our choice. Okay, we said that initially it seems that it's up to us. Prophets bring their messages, and it is up to us whether to accept it or to reject it. And we said that this is confirmed actually by many verses in the Quran. Quran attributes guidance and misguidance to human being, to their free choice. But then there are many other verses that attribute guidance and misguidance to God, and talk as if it's not always up to us whether to be guided or not guided. At certain point, some people cannot be guided. Even though they read the Quran, they hear the Quran being recited, but they cannot understand it. They cannot see the truth in it, and they reject it, but not out of a free choice they make. They reject it because they just find it untrue, right? So what is the story? I recited verses that imply the first idea that we choose freely whether to accept divine guidance or not. And also I recited verses that seem to be rejecting this freedom. of accepting divine guidance or rejecting it. Okay, going deeper into the issue. Okay, so we have to read these verses in a way that they, I mean, we have to read the whole Quran in a consistent way. We have to reconcile these two groups of ayat. Quran doesn't contradict itself, right? So there must be a way for both groups of ayat to be true. There must be a way to reconcile these ayat. And also we have other ayat talking about the pure fitrah creation of human being, and ayat that imply that that pure creation could be distorted, could be corrupted, right, with sins and with unbelief. And so when we look at Quran as a whole, the picture that emerges is the following, which I already described last time. We are free in choosing, in accepting or rejecting divine guidance, but in a complicated way. We are born with a healthy, pure fitrah, both cognitively speaking and psychologically speaking, meaning that we are cognitively made in a way that we could see signs of God, we could comprehend His messages, and psychologically speaking, we have a tendency toward righteousness and toward divinity. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. But we could corrupt our cognition and psychology with our deeds, right, with our actions. So our cognitive system and our psychology are not static. They don't stay the same way throughout our life. Depending on how we responded to them, depending on how we act, we could protect them as they were when we were born, or we could make a mess with them. We could corrupt them, right? We could distort them. So it is actually dynamic. So we are free in accepting or rejecting divine guidance in the sense that at the first time when we receive the messages, at the first time that we get mature and we are at an age that we are held responsible, we have a healthy, pure cognition and psychology. But then, based on our choices, depending on our choices, at a later point of time, it might be more difficult for us to realize divine message and to be psychologically inclined toward accepting it, right? So we are free at beginning, and we almost never lose our freedom, but it becomes more and more difficult for the sinners to realize, to comprehend divine messages, to see divine signs indicating divine existence, existence of God and the right path, and also psychologically to accept it, and could stay, and it could be easier, could become easier and easier for the righteous people who protect their pure fitrah even at later points in their time. So we are free, but in a complicated way. Now, today, I wanna, discuss a couple of more points about this issue. One of the things I wanna discuss is the way that evil deeds, unbelief, and sins could negatively affect our cognition and psychology, and I want to do that by looking at verses from the Quran. So we're going to read some verses in the Quran where God explain how sins could affect our cognition and psychology. And generally, sins and unbelief, according to the Quran, could have a negative effect on two things. First, on our comprehension of signs of God, and by signs I mean both ayat of the Holy Quran, these signs, and also natural signs pointing toward the existence of God and His omnipotence, omniscience, mercy, and other divine attributes. So sins could negatively affect our cognitive capability to see these signs. That's one way that sins could negatively affect our cognition. And another way is the negative effect of sins on our comprehension of moral goodness or badness of actions, right? Sinners at certain points might not be able to vividly discern the badness of their actions anymore, right? And find the good actions to perform. So sins could negatively affect our comprehension of two things: signs of God and morality, moral status of different actions. And these two actually correspond to the two kinds of guidance that God has provided us with. Last time, in response to one of the questions, I said that God has provided human being with two sources of guidance, right? And this comes from a hadith from Al-Kafi, Al-Sharif, which says that God has sent two hujjah, two types of guidance, two sources of guidance for human being. Al-Hujjat al-Batiniyah, an inner source of guidance, and Al-Hujjat al-Dahiriyah, an outer source of guidance. So the inner source of guidance is our reason, our God-given reason, right? So by our reason, we could learn a great deal of thing about the world, about divinity. For example, we could know that telling lies for no reason is morally bad. Killing someone without any justifying reason is morally bad. Taking someone's property without any reason is morally bad. And respecting the elderly, respecting your parents, gratitude are good. And we could discern the goodness of many good things and the badness of many bad things. So that's one thing that a reason, any sane reason, any healthy reason could tell human being. And also, by our pure reason, we could learn a great deal about God and about, the path to salvation. For example, we could, by looking at the natural signs of God's existence, realize that there must be a creator for the world. We can realize that that creator must be very powerful, very merciful, could be very knowledgeable. So we could learn all these things with our pure reason, right? So this is the inner guidance. It could lead us to some extent towards salvation, but it's not perfect, it's not complete, right? It must be complemented by the outer source of guidance, prophets and the Sharia. So prophets come and teach us things that our pure reason could not give us, right? Details about what is going to happen after this life, details about our relation with God, details about the goodness and badness of things. So there are many actions that we might not be able to realize their moral status merely on the basis of our rational thinking, right? And we need Sharia to tell us whether they are good or bad. So these two sources of guidance complement one another. And I said that sins could affect two things: our cognition, our comprehension of signs of God, and our comprehension of the morality of things. And these two correspond to those two types of guidance. Sins could affect our inner, the godly given inner guidance. This could corrupt our reason, right? Our moral conscience, in a way that it doesn't work properly anymore. Or it could also negatively affect our comprehension of the outer guidance. We no longer understand the message of the prophets, right? So there is a correspondence between these two things that could be negatively affected by sins and those two sources of guidance. I mean, sins could negatively affect both of our sources of guidance. So let's now have a look at the verses, at some verses that state how sins and evil deeds could negatively affect our comprehension of signs of God. So here are some of those verses. Surah Al-Mutaffifin, verses 10 to 14. So God says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ويل يومئذ للمكذبين الذين يكذبون بيوم الدين وما يكذب به إلا كل معتد أثيم إذا تتلى عليه آياتنا قال أساطير الأولين كلا بل ران على قلوبهم ما كانوا يكسبون. So what does it say? It says that unbelievers reject the day of judgment, disbelieve it, but why do they reject it? Why do they disbelieve it? Because they are sinners. And so here's the part related to my discussion. When ayat, Quranic verses are offered to them, are recited for them, they say these are just tales of the ancients. These are just fictions, right? Just stories. Why? The reason is stated in the next ayah. رَانَ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ مَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. They say that because of what they have done, because of what they have acquired in their deeds. There is, they've stained their hearts, right? And so in Farsi we say قلبشون زنگار گرفته. So as a result of their sins and evil deeds, they could not see the truth in the ayat. They could not understand, they could not comprehend signs of God. So that's one way, that's one thing that sins could have a negative effect on understanding and comprehending ayat. Yes. So it's a two-way uh, relation, you know. When you reject the ayat, you are doing a sin. But you reject because you've already done other sins. So it's a two-way. You make sins, so you reject the ayat. But rejecting the ayat is another sin that could make it even worse for you. I mean, your situation even worse. Yep. Okay, another example. In Surah Al-Rum, verse 10, God says, ثُمَّ كَانَ عَاقِبَةَ الَّذِينَ أَسَاءُوا السُّوءَ أَنْ كَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ وَكَانُوا بِهَا يَسْتَهْزِئُونَ. So people who reject signs of God, ayatillah, and ridicule them, makes fun of them, they do it as a result of their evil deeds, because they asa'u su, they kaddabu ba'ayatillah, right? So that's a negative effect of their sins on their comprehension of ayat. Another example, Surah Al-Isra, verses 45 to 46, God says, وَإِذَا قَرَأْتَ الْقُرْآنَ جَعَلْنَا بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَ الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْآخِرَةِ حِجَابًا مَسْتُورًا وَجَعَلْنَا عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ أَكِنَّةً أَن يَفْقَهُوهُ وَفِي آذَانِهِمْ وَقْرًا وَإِذَا ذَكَرْتَ رَبَّكَ فِي الْقُرْآنِ وَحْدَهُ وَلَّوْا عَلَى أَدْبَارِهِمْ نُفُورًا. So what do the ayat say here? It says that when you recite the Quran, we put a obstacle, a veil between you and the unbelievers, so that they do not understand what you are saying. And we put in their hearts again veils, akinnatan, so that they do not understand it. And we put in their ears deafness, right? So this deafness in their ears, the coverings over their hearts, and the obstacle between you and them when you recite the Quran, all of them are results of their sins and unbelief. So one way that evil deeds, including unbelief and rejection of the ayat, could affect us is distorting preventing us from understanding ayat. That's a cognitive negative effect, right? Okay, there were a couple of, there are many other verses like this which imply that sinners and unbelievers could not understand Quran's messages, could not realize these signs, and that's a result of their sins. So they're not free in not realizing them. It's not under their control. Maybe they listen and want to realize, but do not. But it is a consequence, a result of of their free choices in the past, right? So it is up to them, but in a complicated way, in the sense that they made mistakes, they made sins, they ignored their moral conscience, and they repeated their mistakes, and they did so many dhulm, to people and to themselves until, and as a consequence, they could not realize the message at a later point. Okay. And here, a couple of verses implying that another negative effect of sins could be on our comprehension of morality, of moral status, goodness and badness of actions. We don't, sinners do not discern the badness of their actions anymore, or at least not as vividly as they used to when they had a pure fitra, right? So here's some of verses with that implication. In Surah Al-Baqarah, verses 11 and 12, God says, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ لَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ قَالُوا إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُصْلِحُونَ أَلَا إِنَّهُمْ هُمُ الْمُفْسِدُونَ وَلَكِنْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. Subhanallah. It's a very dangerous situation. We should try our best not to put ourselves in such a situation. It says that when the sinners, the mufsidun, the corruptors, and here we're not talking about ordinary people, right? We're talking about people who murdered innocent people, who did many great dhulm to people. So we're talking about really corruptors of the earth. When they are told not to corrupt, to make corruption, they say we are muslihun, we are making good things, right? We're not making corruptions. Yes, they are corruptors, but they do not know. They cannot discern the badness of their actions. So the ayah says that, implies that sins, especially great sins, could negatively affect our cognitive capability to discern the badness of bad actions and goodness of good actions. We lose the way. We cannot navigate our moral life anymore. So another such verse in Surah Al-An'am, verse 137, God says, وَكَذَلِكَ زَيَّنَ لِكَثِيرٍ مِّنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ قَتْلَ أَوْلَادِهِمْ شُرَكَاؤُهُمْ لِيُرْدُوهُمْ وَلِيَلْبِسُوا عَلَيْهِمْ دِينَهُمْ وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَا فَعَلُوهُ فَذَرْهُمْ وَمَا يَفْتَرُونَ. So this term, zayyana, tazyin, is used in the Quran multiple times. It's a key term in the Quran, and what it means is, to make something, to make tazyin, if something is zuyyina for someone, it means that action, that deed, is painted as good, is beautified, right? Is made to seem good, beautiful, attractive. And here God says that murder of their children has been made to seem beautiful and good in the eyes of the mushrikeen. They do not discern the badness of this murder anymore. And who made the tazyin for them? Here the verse says shuraka uhum, their partners that they associated with God, right? Right. Another similar verse, God says in Surah Al-Muhammad, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, verse 14, أَفَمَنْ كَانَ عَلَى بَيِّنَةٍ مِّن رَبِّهِ كَمَنْ زُيِّنَ لَهُ سُوءُ عَمَلِهِ وَاتَّبَعُوا أَهْوَاءَهُمْ. Is then one who is on a clear path from his Lord no better than one to whom the evil of his conduct seems pleasing, has been made zuyyina, and such as follow their own lusts. So again, here the ayah implies that sinners do not discern the badness of their actions anymore. Their bad actions are made in their eyes, are painted in their eyes as good. Another verse, God says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْآخِرَةِ زَيَّنَّا لَهُمْ أَعْمَالَهُمْ فَهُمْ يَعْمَهُونَ. Those who do not believe in the day of judgment, we have painted their bad actions as beautiful, as good. So here the agent who has made the tazyin is God. This tazyin has been attributed to God in this verse. In previous verse, it was attributed to partners of mushrikun. In this verse, this tazyin is attributed to shaitan. So let's read it. God says, Surah Al-An'am, verse 43, فَلَوْلَا إِذْ جَاءَهُمْ بَأْسُنَا تَضَرَّعُوا وَلَكِنْ غَسَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ وَزَيَّنَ لَهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. So the second part is related to my discussion. وَلَكِنْ غَسَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ. So their hearts are hardened, became hardened, and Satan made their sinful acts seem alluring to them. So here the tazyin is attributed to shaitan. And we can, I think it would be true to attribute this tazyin at the same time to shaitan, to God, and to other things. It's attributed to God because God allows shaitan and shayateen to make the tazyin. Without his permission, his providence, they could not make the tazyin. So it's attributed to God. But it's attributed to shaitan because shaitan is the person who, in a more direct way, in a more immediate way, make the tazyin. Okay, so there are many other verses I didn't bring here, but the point was that sins, especially great sins, over time could have a negative effect on our cognition, on our comprehension of ayat of the Quran or natural signs of God and the morality of things, right? Okay, so my slides end here. There are a couple of more points I want to make. Brother Taha, I can end the session. Is that fine? Okay. We don't need it anymore. Right. Okay, so to summarize what we've been discussing, the question we raised was whether guidance is accepting the guidance or rejecting the guidance is something that we are free to choose. Is it up to us? My answer was that yes, but in a complicated way. At the beginning, we are totally free to accept or reject the inner guidance as well as the outer guidance, but based on whether we accept or reject it at the beginning, that it could become more difficult or easier to follow the path, right? So it's still free, but could become more difficult for the sinners, could become easier for the righteous and believers. But how about the ayat that attribute guidance and misguidance to God? So we could understand it in different ways. One way you can understand it is that the whole system, the whole creation of a human being is God's job, right? So he made us, our cognition, our psychology in this way. And so if we are guided or misguided in our life, we could attribute it to God. God guided us. God misguided us. He provided us with the inner guidance, with the outer guidance, with the capability to discern these guidances. And also for the sinners, He is the one who made us such that if we make sins, we corrupt our cognition and psychology, and so we tend to be misguided. That's one way to understand it. Another way to understand this is what the great commentator of the Holy Quran, Allama Muhammad Hussain Tabatabai, has said in his Tafsir al-Mizan. He has said that when misguidance is attributed to God, what is meant is that as a punishment of the sins that the sinners have committed, God might refrain from providing further guidance, right? And that's misguidance God might do for the sinners. So that's another way we could attribute misguidance to God, right? And because it happens not at the beginning, but after people make sins, especially great sins, it's not unjust for God to do that. It's a kind of punishment of what they have already done. So that's the response to the second question. Another question, if guidance and misguidance is really God's job, I mean, especially in the way that Allama Tabatabai explains, then is it just for God to guide certain people and misguide certain other people? So we already answered this question. It could be unjust, it is unjust only if God does it with no reason, in an arbitrary way, right? But if God wills some people's guidance and some people's misguidance based on reasons, based on their own choices they made, it's just. It's not unjust anymore, right? Okay. Any questions so far? Yes, Brother Taha. Mm-hmm. 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 Right. Yeah, yeah. Good point. So starting with the second point, there must be many ahadith about these ayat. Yes, that's one way to approach these ayat. But at the same time, we are told by IMIEC, by our imams, that um, Quran, the ayat, it's ayat al-wadaha, not mutashabaha, are clear enough for you to read and reflect upon and understand God's message. I mean, they encourage us to read the Quran and try to understand it. So we could complement both approaches with one another, right? But our imams themselves encouraged us to just read the Quran. I mean, this should be one of our daily, you know, uh, um, daily things that we do. That we try to read the Quran and comprehend, reflect upon it, and try to understand it. So, yeah, that's what I try to do in these sessions. But certainly, there must be a hadith, helpful ahadith about these ayat as well. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Yes, God is described as a Hadi al Mudallin. That's also true. We have to, I mean, be careful what Mudallin here means, because God even describes our prophets to be model at certain point. Alam naj, alam yajidka yatiman fa'awa wajadaka dhallan fahada. So God, our prophet was not the kind of dhal who became dhal as a result of his sins. That's a kind of dalal that everyone finds themselves at the beginning of their journey, right? They need guidance. Without divine guidance, they could not find a way. So Hadi al-Mudallin here might be pointing to that kind of guidance of people who need God guidance in order to get guidance, right? Yeah. So the first point of Brother Taha, the question was, is it the case that after a certain point, sinners are sort of forced towards misguidance? They cannot return to the right path. So I think two things could be said here, and all of them are tentative. I mean, you're very welcome to share your ideas here, but here's what comes to my mind right now. We could say two things. First, no one never lose their freedom in this world as far as guidance is concerned. The only thing is that the more sins you make, the more difficult it is for you to make the right choice. You need a stronger will. You have the will. I mean, you are free. You have the free will, but it requires a very stronger will for you on your part to get back on track, right? And so people might not be that strong. I mean, their wills have become weakened. They have a weak will after making the sins. So it's not that they don't have free will. It's only that it's much harder for them to have the will to return, right? Their will is not strong enough. So they're never deprived of freedom. That's one thing that one might say. Even the most vicious enemies of God are free until they die, whether to return or not, whether to do the tawbah, to repent or not. But it's much more difficult for them to do repentance compared to someone with less sins. Right. Another thing one might say is that after making very grave and great wrong and sins, maybe the sinner is not free anymore. I mean, that's a punishment for them. Think about the most evil people in the world that you know about. Is it unjust for God to just not let them return as a punishment of what they have done? They were free. They freely made the choice to become such a vicious person, and they ended up in a total darkness. They cannot find the way anymore. Brother Ali said something interesting once in our tafsir circles. He said that nowhere in Quran Moses invites Pharaoh to accept his religion and Sharia. He only asks him to release Bani Israel, Israel, to come with him. Right? Right. Yeah. So before we are past time, I want to make two more points, and I mean these gonna be the last points of our discussion, and this is the last session in our discussion. So first, I want to attract your attention to contemporary discussions of the same issue in contemporary Western philosophy. So in contemporary Western philosophy, not Islamic philosophy, Western philosophy, there are theist philosophers who have raised the same view that we see in the Quran about the negative effects of sins on our cognition, concerning divinity, divine, the right path, and morality. And it needs some background. Let me give you some background information here. So, you know that traditionally, the arguments that have been raised for the existence of God are logical arguments. What do I mean by logical arguments? Arguments that have a series of premises, and then on the base of the premises, the existence of God is tried to be inferred, right? For example, the argument, a very simple version of the argument from order. We say that there is order in the world. Nothing can be ordered unless someone gives the order. An order doesn't come just out of chance. Therefore, there is a designer for the universe. That's a very simple version of the argument from design, right? So, how is the existence of the God proved here? There are certain statements, and existence of God is derived from those premises. It's a logical argument, right? It works on the basis of certain statements, certain premises. And other traditional arguments for the existence of God work in a similar way. Certain statements, then a logical inference from those premises to the existence of God. But recently, and by recently I mean maybe since 5 decades ago, some theist philosophers have offered a new way to argue for the existence of God. They've said that logical arguments for the existence of God are good, but they're not the only type of argument. They are not the only way to show that there is a God. They've said that why can't we believe in God based on perceiving God, perceiving His grace, His mercy, His Ghufran, right? His majesty, His power. When you look at, for example, the word, you could see the power of God within the word. In a way, you come to see God in the word. So, in a literal sense of the word, according to those theist philosophers, we could see and perceive divine power, divine mercy, divine forgiveness, especially in those moments of our life that we are under, certain pressures. We have a religious experience, right? And they've said that these religious experiences could rationally justify and make reasonable our belief in God. As part of their project, an objection is usually raised to this kind of argument. People say that why not everyone have this perception? Why not everyone have the religious experience? Why not everyone feel God's presence in their life, God's grace, God's mercy? Many people do. When we pray, when we read the Quran, when we do the commemoration, adadari, and when we are in such situations, in such states, we undergo those religious experiences, right? Traditionally we call it mystical states, halat irfani, mystical experience. But using the terminology of the contemporary philosophy, these are religious experiences. We are experiencing God or something about God, His mercy, His presence, His forgiveness, and these things. We are coming into a direct contact and encounter with divinity, and that experience could justify our belief in God. Then a common objection that is raised is that why not everyone have those experiences? If that's something that could be experienced, is perceivable, why not everyone perceive it? And the response they give is that sins could have negative effect on that part of human cognition that could discern divinity, could come into such direct contact and encounter with that reality. If you Google noetic effects of sin, you see hundreds and hundreds of papers and books on this issue produced in the last few decades. So contemporary theist philosophers actually have offered the same view that we see in the Quran and we've been discussing so far, to the effect that sins could have negative effect on our cognition. The part of the cognition that is concerned about perceiving divinity and discerning divinity in the world. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. So, and even though it is within our own Quran and it is within the teachings of our own imams, it is the Western philosophers, the atheistic, mostly Christian philosophers, who have formulated the view and the argument. So, talking about imams, let me just refer to Nahj al-Balagha. Someone came to Amir al-Mu'minin and asked him whether he sees the God that he worships. And Amir al-Mu'minin responded, I don't worship a God whom I do not see. But I don't see him with the eyes on my head, with these physical eyes. I see him with my heart. What does it mean? I mean, as far as I understand it, it's just the same idea that we could perceive God, we could see God, we could come into a direct encounter and contact with God. That's one of our cognitive capabilities, if we have not corrupted that capability, right? So that's one thing that, this Islamic view, is even pursued, is even argued for by some contemporary philosophers and important philosophers. I can give you names, but I don't want to drop names. But Alvin Plantinga, Alston, Walter Stroff, all three are very great philosophers. Okay, that's one point. Second point is a comment that one of our friends gave me last week after my talk, and I want to emphasize what they said. So, nothing I said means that we can judge other people. We can judge whether someone else is misguided, is not on the right path. No. We have been told by our imams to be busy with our own faults. Tuba liman shaghala liman shaghalahu aibuhu or uyubuhu an uyub al-nas. I can translate in Farsi much more easily than English. خوشا به حال کسی که پرداختن به عیوب خودش اونو مشغول کرده باشه یا مشغول بکنه از پرداختن به عیوب دیگران. So in English, it's very good that you are busy with your own faults and trying to improve your own yourself, then trying to find faults with other people, right? So that's only one example. We have many other examples that encourage us not to make judgments about other people, right? Because we don't know what's going on in their hearts, in their minds, what situation they are in. If we are in their situation, we might do even worse, right? So nothing I said, nothing that is said by these verses I recited permit and justify judging other people. These verses are only for our own use in order to understand how important it is that at each moment of our life, what we do. Every step we take could protect our pure fitrah or distort it. If we make sins, we are getting away and more away than guidance, and makes it more difficult for us to return, right? So it is only for us to try to just assess our situation, try to do tahdib and all these other things. So I think that's all I wanted to say. Any questions? And we are almost past time. We have 1 minute, right, Brother Taha, for any question. Okay, thank you so much for your attention, and may God guide us and help us keep and protect our God-given pure fitrah, cognition and psychology, in order to always be on the right path. Please recite as-salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
Thanks a lot, Brother Morvarid. Taqabbal Allah. Please send a loud salawat for the health and safety of Aqa Morvarid, and so that their research into Islamic subjects may go on and all their problems may be solved. Please send a loud salawat. So Adhan is in a couple of minutes, like 3-4 minutes, and no, I'm sorry, it's not in the program. Sister Radi. We will have a short, since tomorrow is the martyrdom of Imam Jafar Sadiq, the 6th Imam. We will be having a very short and brief eulogy. So, and after that we will inshallah be praying. Sallallahu Muhammad wa Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وأهلك عزاءهم يا صاحب الزمان يا صاحب الزمان بر دیده ما ضیا بده مهدی جان بر سینه ما صفا بده. مهدی جان آقای من دور سر مادرت بگردان چیزی آن را بهر صدقه به ما بده. مهدی جان یا صاحب الزمان، یا صاحب الزمان، ایام شهادت امام صادق علیه السلام است. دلها را ببریم مدینه و کنار قبرستان بخی 4 تا قبر خاکی منصور زاد زهر تو را ای امید دل. منصور زاد زهر تو را ای امید دل. رحمی نکرد بر جگر پاره پاره‌ات یا امام صادق. پدر و مادرم و جانم به فدای تو. یک بار کشت ابن ربیعت میان راه، یک بار کشت ابن ربیعت میان راه. منصور گشت باعث قتل دوباره. منصور فرستاد ابن ربیع را دل شب، آمدن از بالای بام وارد شدن. حجت خدا را با سر و پای برهنه بردن. خودشان سوار بر مرکب، عزیز زهرا پای پیاده می دوید. تنها نسوخت بیت تو که افتاد بر جگر. تنها نسوخت بیت تو که افتاد بر جگر. از شعله های خانه زهرا شراره. یک بارم فرستاد منصور ملون خانه امام صادق را آتش زدن. نوشتن میان آتش و زود قدم بر می داشت. صدا می زدن ابن عراق الثرا، یعنی من فرزند ریشه های زمینم. انا ابن ابراهیم خلیل الله، من فرزند ابراهیم خلیلم که خدا آتش را برایش بردن و سلاما قرار داد. حتما به یاد مادرش زهرا افتاد. این جمله را هم فرموده باشد انا ابن فاطمه الزهرا، من پسر فاطمه، همان فاطمه که در خانه‌اش چیز آورده، هرچه گفتن پشت در فاطمه است. اونا نجیب صدا زد و این کانت فاطمه، اگرچه فاطمه باشد خانه را آتش میزنم. زهرا جان یا صاحب الزمان، امام صادق به یاد جد مظلومش حسین هم بود. یک روز بعد از آتش زدن خانه امام صادق، یکی از شیعیان میگوید محضر امام صادق مشرف شدم، دیدم آقا محزون است، گریه میکند منقلب. عرض داشتم ابن رسول الله چرا محزونی؟ امام صادق علیه السلام فرمود روز گذشته که خانم را آتش زدن، می دیدم یاد عاشورا افتادم. زن و بچه از این طرف به آن طرف می دویدن، هم خیمه ها را غارت کردن، هم آتش زدن، هم با تازیان دنبال زن و بچه ها می دویدن. حاجت نبود آتش سوزان به خیمه ها، دشتی ز سوز سینه زینب شراره بود. یک خیمه نیم سوخته شد جای 100 یتیم، چیزی که جان داشت در آن خیمه چاره بود. یکی می گفت امه گوشه، یکی می گفت امه پایم، یکی می گفت امه اگر داری چادری رو پوشی برایم بدن. آخه هرچه بود برده بودن، غارت کرده بودن. از دستها مپرس که با گوش ها چه کردن، از گوش ها بپرس که با گوش وار بود. صلی الله علیک یا ابا عبدالله و صلی الله علیک یا جعفر ابن محمد. خدایا
بحق امام حسین و امام صادق فرج امام زمان ما برسان. موانع ظهور و فرجش برطرف بفرما. دنیا و آخرت ما را با اهل بیت منور بگردان. بالنبی و آله رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة مع الصلوات. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. الله أكبر الله أكبر. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. حي على خير العمل. حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وسلم.